Welcome back to Google headquarters here in Mountain View. We're here for another edition of Measure Matters. I'm Louis Gray.
And I'm Krista Seiden.
And I'm really excited to kick off episode 6 in this series, talking about optimization best practices. There's really nobody better to do this with than Krista, who knows everything there is to know about A/B testing.
Oh, I don't know if I would go that far. Thank you, Louis.
So I want to talk really quickly about what we've talked about in our previous 5 episodes. If you've been watching, thank you very much. And if you're new to the series, the good news is you can go to bit.ly/Measure Matters, and you can get the entire thing. It's a full playlist on YouTube. But what we talked about last time, if we go to the next slide, is Google Marketing Platform. And this is our biggest rebrand in several years, in the number of years I've been working on analytics. And we had a huge array of products, big introductions, brand new names. We also went deep on Salesforce integration. And we talked quite a bit how customer relationship management doesn't just end on the online portion, but also has an offline portion. We talked about that integration between Salesforce and Google Analytics. We did a deep dive into the Data Studio Explorer, which we actually had a blog post about yesterday, and cross-device reporting and funnels for advanced analysis written by nobody else besides Krista Seiden. So you're coming up a lot because you know this stuff, and I'm so glad you're here. So let's jump ahead and talk about what's new in product. We did this big introduction with the rebrand and introduced many new looks and approaches to the way that we handle data and the way that we present it to you so you can get all your access in one place. And so the first thing is we did a visual refresh on our marketing sites, which you can take a look at marketingplatform.google.com. And also, the URL is too long to spell out, but if you guys see it on your screen, you can go. And that's our brand new blog, which is part of the bigger Google blog now. And if you go to blog.google, you can have specific tags on our marketing platform suite, as well as Google Analytics, and find what you're looking for.
Does that mean we made it to like the big shots if we're on the actual Google blog now?
Well, you made it the first day you started here at Google. So the good news is they all recognize that. And so the Google Analytics content is now essentially on the front page for Google. And we do have a brand new Twitter handle, which is the G Marketing Platform.
But don't worry, we still have the @Google Analytics handle.
We absolutely do. And we'll talk about analytics. You go to the next slide. This is something that's big for us. The google.com/analytics site is one that our visitors look at every single day. You know, you really have 2 entry points to our platform. The first of which is the one that many of you already have bookmarked and don't even think about, which is analytics.google.com. You go straight to that, you get right into the product. But many other people want to know more about our latest and greatest content, whether they're looking at the Measure Matter videos, whether they're looking at our social content, or going to google.com/analytics and really having some best practices and marketing tips.
Or just to sign in.
And that's why we have that sign in button right at the top right. It seems like a little thing, but everybody comes in through that sign in place and gets right into analytics. So we're happy to know that that continues to work. And we did talk a little bit about Data Studio. We did a big blog post yesterday on really 3 new pieces, one of which data blending. We talked about actually a couple of times already on Measure Matters with some great pieces from Enor and SuperMetrics. We also introduced Data Studio Explorer, which we talked about earlier, and also one thing I'm excited about, which I know we're probably going to showcase in an upcoming edition, which is the Data Studio Gallery. And so you can not just have access to a great tool like Data Studio to be able to run your own reports, but you can leverage all the content that other people have done for you.
Yep.
Because the truth is, you're probably not the first person to make a report about marketing. You're not the first person to measure your website stats or have a PR dashboard. So why not take a look at that gallery, copy, paste, learn from it, and really use a report and hone it to your own needs. So I'm glad that that's
Steal
there.
with pride.
Steal with pride.
One thing that we had here on data blending, which is why we're bringing it back up in this episode, is we wanted to let you know that calculated fields on top of that blended data will be coming soon. So data blending is available, and you can look forward to calculated fields with that data blending.
Absolutely. And we did promise that was coming, so it is going to be coming up soon. And so one thing I often talk about with Measure Matters is I get this great opportunity to hear from you. And so what's interesting is Krista and I can only do so much. We can only write so many pieces, do so many videos. But the rest of you have deep insights into what makes Google Analytics special and our entire family of products. And so I often run into great stories on the web with some how-to tips and nice interfaces. And SuperMetrics had one, which I liked a lot, focusing on Data Studio dashboards. What they said was, to get that dashboard looking great, you should follow these immutable laws of user experience. And it seems like the basics. You know, you want to make it readable, you want to make it discoverable. But really, I dove down into this, and they had some really smart pieces about familiarity and simplicity. You don't want to confuse a user when they look at it. You don't want the colors to be too garish. You want the boundaries to indicate that things are grouping or somewhat related. and really reduce that complexity. Because the truth is, if someone comes to your dashboard and they figure out what they need to do right away, then you've won the game.
Now, did they actually say the immutable laws of data visualization?
If they didn't, then they should have. So, these are laws that are just there, and they have some really good references and some precedent for why they've selected these laws. It wasn't just made up. But these are people who have been looking at UX their whole lives and have come to some very specific conclusions. And I did like how SuperMetrics went to that, learning from what they have an expert level analysis on, and applied that to Data Studio.
Absolutely. And SuperMetrics is also one of the largest contributors to our connector gallery. They have a ton of different connectors to connect to different social media platforms, to spreadsheets, to all sorts of things. So if you're not familiar with SuperMetrics, you can definitely check them out in the connectors in Data Studio as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And another piece is Marketing Mojo. And I wanted to highlight this because we are here to talk about Optimize today. And so Marketing Mojo really said it's kind of like an undersung product in our suite. They really think that Optimize is something special. And we're going to talk about that later today to show exactly why we think that's the case.
I mean, I definitely agree with that.
You do have some bias. But it said a professional digital marketing team should be using Optimize frequently. And it's not just use it, but use it frequently. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But previously, as I said, testing would need different departments and different teams and different programs to come together. It would be a little bit disjointed, and you try to find out who's collecting what. But now, as they put it, all you need is a goal, a digital marketing team, and Google Optimize, and you're set. So if you pick the right variables and goals and measure, you're on the right path. And so I really appreciated them coming to that conclusion and sharing it with the world.
I think that's a really good segue into our big question of the day, which is talking about optimization best practices. And I really like what you were saying there about how Optimize is bridging this gap between the analytics or the marketing team and the optimization team, because I personally believe that's true. And not only do I believe that's true of the product, but in general, I think it's a best practice. I think to be testing different things on your website, you have to have a solid data infrastructure. So you have to be working very closely with your analytics team. But it's also touching the marketing and the words and the messages that are out in market for your end users, which is why you have to have a tight connection with your digital marketing team.
And so we've talked about this a lot in Measure Matters. It's not just measuring for the sake of measurement, but it's measuring the right things.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting, often when I talk to teams about Optimize, they say, oh, we do that. We do A/B testing. Of course we do that. And even similar things like AdWords, when you look at the ability to run different keywords against each other and automatically learn what's working. I think we're going to talk about this a lot when we go through this deck, but optimization is more than just A/B testing. Yep. It's being able to find out what works best for you, but also for your users, and really takes the next step into personalization, which I know we're going to get into and I feel very passionately about, in terms of making sure that the web is presenting the right content to the right people at the right time.
100%. All right, so let's go ahead and dig in, and I think we'll talk about a lot of these concepts as we go through. So first, what is optimization? I think that there are so many different definitions. In fact, I did a little side project where I put this question out on Twitter, and I asked for people to send me their definition of what optimization was. And I think 20 or 30 people replied, and I got 20 or 30 different answers.
Right.
So we've come up with one here. It's certainly not the end-all, be-all, but it's one that I like. And the way that we have it is that it's the ongoing data-driven process of continually discovering and quantifying the most effective experience, both online and offline, for your consumers and your customers. I also had somebody one time point out to me that this definition is quite long and could be optimized.
Well, it is. This is the one way you get the answer right for everybody. When you ask 20 or 30 people, it's probably going to have 20 or 30 words. But the actual thing is, when you drill down on this piece, the important piece is ongoing. Well, that's obvious. You're not going to do it once and say we're done. You did an A/B test, fixed it, we're completely completed. And then continually is kind of redundant, so we could probably strip that out. But discovering and quantifying. So that means finding it out, but also counting it, right? So what we talk about is observation. When you look at measurement, it's not just telling you what happened, but why it happened and what's important.
Yep. And on top of that, one thing that you brought up is personalization, and it's something that we'll be talking about later as well. And so a definition for this could be the process of continuously providing effective, optimized experiences to customers based on a source, a behavior, demographics, or any other characteristic. One thing that I like so much about personalization, and Lewis, I think you'll have some thoughts on this, maybe we can get to later, is I often think that this term in general is overblown or used to mean so many different things when I don't necessarily feel that you have to have a fancy tool set or a team of data scientists to be able to personalize. I think you can do it with the tools that you already have. You can do it with Optimize. You can do it with the data that you have. And we're going to show you a few ways how a little later on.
Absolutely. And, we are going to talk more about personalization as this goes through. But as marketers, we now have so many pieces of data at our fingertips. And it would be foolish not to use them, right? And so the web should not be the same for everyone. It's not one size fits all.
Yep. Absolutely. So, of course, we're Google. We love to do studies. We had a study that said that 94% of marketers agree that website personalization is critical to their future success, and that those who were doing it saw a 19% uplift in sales from those who have implemented such personalization activities on their own websites. On top of that, we have a quote from Harvard Business Review, which I absolutely love. It says, "Not to know your customers, not to understand their unmet needs, and not to invest resources based on those needs is to cede one of your most important assets to potential challengers." I think this speaks volumes to losing out if you are not doing personalization and you're not optimizing your websites for all the different types of customers you have coming to you.
And this reminds me a lot of our discussion with Firebase not too long ago. We talked about Firebase and different things that people can do to make changes based on user behavior within a game or within an app. And that is personalization and optimization.
Absolutely.
And so you specifically mentioned a 19% uplift. And I remember from that Measure Matters episode is that the CEO said it was a literal game changer for the company. They went from being unprofitable to profitable. And nobody can look at me and say 19% is not a big deal. It's a huge deal.
It definitely is. And the beauty of that one is that it was Optimize running in the background to deliver those stats.
I swear I didn't know that ahead of time. That's good stuff.
All right, so moving on. When we think about optimization, that next jump is often personalization. And we want to know what personalized experiences should I provide to my customers and what is the expected benefit? I think this is a question that is on top of many people's minds. And to that end, I have created something that I like to call the optimization maturity model. And I kind of see this as a model for best practices, for maturity through this process, for going from just starting out in A/B testing all the way to personalization and really hitting it home with very unique experiences for your users. So we have mass scale, specialization, referral source, and actions to make up this maturity model. And we're going to walk through each one of these one by one. So we start with mass personalization and mass scale. And this is understanding your audience in order to target the largest user groups. So Lewis, way back when I joined Google, almost 6 years ago, I was in what was then called the Enterprise Group, is now called the G Suite Group, which is the group that will sell you Gmail for your business. And we had a website that looked like this. This is actually a slightly optimized version of the website that I first saw when I came in. And the big call to action on this site is that green button that says Get Started. We wanted everybody to click this green button, fill out a 3-step trial form, and start a trial of Google Apps for Business. And it was my job to test the heck out of this website and get us to a more optimized place. Now, I think that testing ideas can come from many different parts of the organization, and I would regularly solicit ideas from sales, from marketing, from engineering. And at one point, our engineering said, hey, that headline that you have, it says discover a better way of working. But we know that most people who click that green button and go through that process to sign up for a trial of Google Apps for Business, all they're ever doing is using Gmail. So why don't we change that headline to be more appropriate to what we're actually selling here, which is Gmail. So we said, okay, we'll run a headline test. And we were pretty adamant. We didn't think anything was going to beat Discover a Better Way of Working. Marketing loved this message because it was this holistic message of how the various tools in the G Suite group, so Hangouts, Docs, Drive, Gmail, could all help you work together to better your business. But engineering thought that some of these other headlines might work better, and you can tell they were written by engineering when you look at things like get email for your domain and get Gmail for work, 99.9% uptime in 24/7 support. And so we saw these headlines, we were like, okay, engineering helped build us this platform to test. We need to appease them. We're going to run this test. So we did. And surprise, surprise, 2 weeks later, when this finished, I was actually halfway across the world. I believe I was in Australia for a conference, getting ready to go to bed, and I start getting frantic pings from our VP of engineering. And he was saying, you better launch my headline. And I was like, oh no, quickly check the data, see what's going on. Lo and behold, get email for your domain was the winner. At the same time, I'm getting frantic pings from our VP of marketing, and she is saying, don't you dare launch that headline. That is not on brand for us. And so I'm going back and forth with both of these stakeholders while it's bedtime for me. What ended up happening was I worked for probably 3 or 4 hours into the night trying to broker a solution, which ended up being that we were going to go ahead and launch this new headline to everybody, 100% of our traffic, while I also drafted up that evening a couple of additional test plans to test some more marketing-friendly headlines to get us back to something that they felt comfortable with. A couple weeks down the road, we ended up with a headline ultimately that said, get Gmail for work, and it had a sub-headline of and Docs and Drive and all of the other things that help you work better together. So we did come to a nice little happy end, but 2 morals to that story. So the first is that when you are testing, it's best practice to get input from so many different areas of the organization. Engineering had a great idea here. But before you actually run that test, you should get sign-off from everybody that they are okay with that winner actually launching. And 2 is back to our maturity model in general, mass scale. So we didn't actually personalize this website in any meaningful way. We changed a headline for everybody. But what we got was a massive winner because we understood who our target audience was. We understood who the majority of our customers were and what they were looking for, and we tailored our message to them.
And one thing that really helps this type of a decision, when you have loggerheads and you have 2 people with very distinct viewpoints, is data, right? And so when you're looking at this, you're not just saying, let's just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. You're saying, here's a number of solutions that we have. We've come with a number of options. Here's what the data tells us and why we're making this decision. So if you have somebody who has a very strong opinion that doesn't match the data, usually you have a pretty good point and you're able to understand why they feel that way and why the data disagrees with their viewpoint. And sometimes you have to go in between and say, well, maybe the data is not exactly going to agree with us, but we can come halfway. Because branding is not invisible. The branding's a real thing. And so even when you're saying get email with your domain, you should mention the other suite of products that they also get, which is very cool.
So the next step of our maturity model is specialized personalization. And this is another example where we are not necessarily tweaking things on the site for one group of people, but we're tweaking it overall for a specific group. So for example, a specific locale with location-specific content. So for this, I have an example with the G Suite group once again. As you remember from the previous example, we had this lovely website. This was our US English version of this website. And this was our Japanese version of this website. As you can tell, it's the exact same template between the US English and the Japanese version. Now, Louis, have you ever seen a Japanese website?
I have not. I don't think I have. Not this one anyway.
Well, I can tell you that most do not look like this. They tend to be very busy. They have a lot of widgets. They have a lot of information thrown at you all at once. And that is how they prefer to do business, how they prefer to interact with the web. So we were getting a lot of feedback from our Japanese team that was telling us that this website, which was the global template, just wasn't working for them. And they wanted to do some things to test some differences that would be specific to Japan. So one of the first things that we decided to test was the gray button in the upper right-hand corner next to the green button. It says contact sales, but feedback from our Japanese team told us that Japanese people do not tend to buy online by contacting sales through a form. They have sit-down meetings. They want to have handouts to take back to their bosses. It's a very formal process, somewhat different than how we do business in the US, which, I mean, as a global business, we should definitely understand. So we decided that we were going to replace that button. And we had a rough translation you can see on the slide of flow of available. What it was something that we called our guided flow. So instead of a form to contact sales, when they clicked that button, it actually was this pop-up that talked about the entire trial process for Google Apps for Business and what you had to do during that 30-day process to be able to set everything up and eventually you're billing and become a paying customer. And it was printable, which was really important. And the great thing with this test was that we saw a almost 700% increase in clicks on that button and about an 8% increase in people actually starting the trial process because coming through this button in this widget pop-up. So it ended up being a very successful test for us. And because we didn't necessarily learn from our mistakes about locale specific content, we actually tried the same test in the US and the UK and it failed miserably.
But that's how you learn.
That is how you learn. So we took this one step farther and we said, okay, let's mock up what a Japanese version of our website might be. So we mocked loosely on the left-hand side. You can see we added a bunch of widgets and a bunch more information. We even came up with a potential canvas photo that was the Tokyo skyline. And about a year later, after continued testing, we ended up launching the site on the right, which was much more friendly to the Japanese market and how they expect to see websites. And it ended up performing much better for this local economy, for their local business. And so we learned a couple things out of there. One was that we needed to listen closely to all of our different local teams on the ground. And two, that a global template doesn't always work everywhere, and that being willing to go outside of that template and test location-specific content can actually be really fruitful for the business.
And this is something where the data can tell you the story, right? So you might have an idea that users prefer a certain method or they want to see the Google logo in a certain way.
Yep.
You know, the first time I saw you bring up the Google Apps for Business, I really liked the fact it was the Google Classic logo. And I think between us, we've got 13 years experience here. You know, not a super long time, but long enough to see change. And, you know, now we've got a new logo and a new look and feel. And some of the app names have changed. We talked a lot about this, the Google Marketing Platform, for example. But as we continue to make changes, you have to continue to measure and make sure that you're on the right path, that you have the true North Star with that goal and bring it through. And you mentioned, I think the numbers are very disparate. You know, you talk about 700% more clicks, essentially, but 8% more completions of the guided flow. And so I'm now really curious. I would love to double down and see how that user flow came through and what did that journey look like, and were they getting the right information with the additional clicks that went through so that you got that North Star meeting?
Yeah, definitely. I can tell you from firsthand experience, it did pay off for us. Okay, so moving on to our next step of the maturity model is optimization and personalization with the referral source. So now we're getting into a little bit more modern day. We're going to pull some examples from more recent times here. We are looking at targeting our audience based on the referral source. So we know that you spend a lot of time as a digital marketer building ads, or at least somebody on your team is spending a lot of time building ads. They've spent a lot of effort to make the perfect headline, to make the perfect message, the perfect image, and get people to actually be interested enough that they're going to click on that ad and go to your website. But how do we know that we are actually serving them the right landing page for that ad? How do we know that the messages are matching their expectation from that ad? You've already spent so much time on the ad, you might as well bring a lot of that goodness through to your website by testing out those landing pages. So let's look at an example. Here we have a website. It's a shoe website. We're selling some shoes. In this case, we have a summer sale going on. We're targeting this at a young audience. You can see we've got some fun shoes and sunglasses, a picture of people having fun in the sun, and an offer. And we've spent a lot of time already on the ads to drive those people here, that targeted demographic. And we want to make sure that we're landing them in the right place. But how do we know this is going to be the right landing page? Maybe a site that actually lands them on something that is speaking an emoji might work better. Who knows? I personally don't understand what that means, but
it's not the right cohort. Krista.
but somebody probably does.
Absolutely.
So, there's a lot of different options for landing pages. And the moral of this story is that you really do want to make sure that all of that effort spent on those ads that you've formatted is not wasted when they come to a website that doesn't speak to them. So do test that landing page. And you can do that really easily, really well with
Google Optimize
and the AdWords integration. So Google Optimize has a integration directly to Google Ads. Sorry, I actually said the wrong name, the old brand. We mentioned at the beginning of this episode that we have rebranded everything, and Google Ads is one of those products. But we have this integration with Google Ads that allows you to actually target at the campaign, even the keyword level, various ads that are running with specific landing pages. And this is a perfect example to use and really see benefit from that integration.
And it speaks to the user intent as well. I think that's an important piece, is that when you're advertising a very specific offer in an ad, the landing page better look a lot like that ad and have the same messaging.
Yeah.
You don't want to click through A and see a B result and just be surprised.
Well, and one thing you just called out there is user intent. I think that's really important. So you spend a lot of time formatting those ads, but by a user actually clicking on it, they are telling you that what their intent is, right? They are very clearly focused on the message of that ad.
Absolutely.
Okay, so moving on to our last piece of the maturity model we have here, and that's optimization and personalization at the action level. So this gets even more specific, and we are targeting specific audiences based on the actions they've already taken on your site. This is where we start to get a little bit more into what you might call one-to-one personalization or one-to-many based on the audience size. But let's take a look. So we know that we have many different customers that might come to our site. There's this whole group of everyone. There's our target audience who's actually interested in us, those that we can capture with advertising or email or any other type of messaging that we're bringing to our website become our visitors. And then of those, for example, if we have an e-commerce store, some of those visitors will become our purchasers. And we need to find the right place within that journey to target these users with the right message to be able to convert more of that target audience to visitors to purchasers.
And one thing I think about here, Krista, that we don't talk a lot about is the type of user behavior. And there's really two types that you can measure in the entire marketing process and personalization process. And first is the explicit user behavior, and the second is implicit user behavior. Now, all of us who use the web are very familiar with explicit data where we say, I don't like this type of news, or I don't like this type of news source, or I don't want to see articles from this site. That's you explicitly telling the app what you want to see. This other kind is implicit, where we learn based on how long you've been on the page, how many clicks you've made, what time of day you came in, whether you visited before. And this is implicit behavior where the user doesn't have to tell you anything, but the website and the app get smarter.
Exactly. And Google Analytics actually comes in on both sides of that because we're able to collect data explicitly about what users are telling us and also implicitly based on demographics and other things that we know. And in this case, we are going to look at a segment or an audience of users. This is our audience builder within Google Analytics. And you can see we've applied a condition here to have transactions per user greater than 0. So basically, this is users who have already made a purchase on our site. So in this case, we are wanting to target with a personal experience our return purchasers. Here you can see we've just created that audience. We are now sharing it to Google Optimize through the audience builder within Google Analytics. You can see the audience destination there is Optimize 360. Quick note here is that you can actually use this same builder to share these same audiences with Google Ads or Display and Search 360, and you can remarket or show ads to this group of users, bring them to your website, and then show them a personalized experience all based on that same audience. So pretty cool that we can share these audiences to multiple platforms across the Google stack.
And that's what we would expect at this point. We've talked a lot about Data Studio connectors. This is another suggestion where each of the products should work seamlessly together, and you should be able to take the data from one piece and move it to another.
Yep, absolutely. So here we are. Now we are in Google Optimize, and you can just see that I have that audience list. This is actually in Optimize 360 feature to share audiences. So I pulled in my GA audience list, which is users who made a purchase. I'm going to target my test to my previous purchasers. And in this case, I want to let my previous purchasers know here in the editor, I've got a summer sale. And they can save 30% on select YouTube gear by shopping this summer sale now. And perhaps I only want to show this offer to people who have bought before because I feel like they might be my loyal customers or people that I want to incentivize to become repeat purchasers.
And they know how the sign-out flow works. They've done it once.
Yeah. So there we go. We have all of these pieces that have now come together to really be this story of optimization. And I just want to walk through one last example, kind of putting it all together in one piece. So here we have an example website. This is Light in the Box, one of our customers, and they have a online store to shop on. And in this case, I've searched for digital cameras. I'm really interested in buying a new digital camera. And maybe I've searched, maybe I've even added one to my cart, but I haven't checked out yet. So as the analyst for this company, I have an opportunity. So here we're looking at a custom funnel report in Google Analytics 360. And in this case, we can see that we have people who have come to the site, they've viewed their digital cameras, some have even added to their cart, but very, very few have checked out. And the thing I love most about this report is if you click that downward red arrow, we're gonna get a pop-up box. And in this case, it's saying, hey, you had 2,346 users who added to their cart, but did not check out. Do you want to create a segment and remarket to them? Well, of course absolutely. We do. We're good marketers. We want to do that. We want to bring them back.
The percentage is so low who've actually completed it. I would get worried. I would absolutely be hitting that button.
Totally. And this is where Optimize now comes in, because not only, as I mentioned earlier, can we share that segment to Google Ads or Display and Video 360, but we can share that same segment to Google Optimize. So when those users come back through an ad, we can carry that same ad message, which might be an incentive, for example, free shipping, over to the website and say, hey, welcome back. Get free shipping on your next order to incentivize them further to complete that purchase. So this is just a few of those pieces coming together with the advertising, the personalization based on what we already know about them, the actions, the landing page. I think it's a nice little story to show how many of these things that we've talked about today can come together in a single digital marketing campaign.
From start to finish. From
start to finish. So to recap, we have our optimization maturity model. We talked about mass scale, specialization, referral source, and actions. And Lewis, I wanted to turn it over to you here for one last kind of thought on optimization and personalization, because I know you've been in this space for a very long time, and I think our users would really love to hear any thoughts you might have there.
So we talked a little bit about that earlier with explicit behavior and implicit behavior, and a number of years ago I wrote this post about the third wave of the web, because everyone was saying this first wave was about search and discovery and just getting online, and then the second wave was with social. You had all these websites just pop up. MySpace, Foursquare, Friendster, Twitter, Facebook, obviously, LinkedIn, so many different ones where it's just about connecting to people. And so we were trying to hypothesize what's that next wave going to be. And at the time, this is probably 8 years ago, I suggested it would be personalization.
I saw your post. It was from 2010. It was indeed 8 years ago.
I like seeing those old posts and go, oh, it still holds up, right? And so the idea was that personalization is going to become a bigger deal because a lot of people talk about information overload. And what that really signals is that they haven't filtered down to the right content. Information overload just means, hey, I have a lot of irrelevant information that's there. Often when people complain about advertising, for example, it's because it's off target. Totally. I don't need to see a lot of targets for content that I will never buy. It's not good to the user, it's not good to the website, and it's not good to the advertiser. And so the more that you infuse the web with personalization, the more it knows you better. That means the less time you need to spend on it, first of all, the quicker you can get everything done, and it's really beneficial to all the people who are involved. And so personalization is really critical for a marketing person. You can't just spray and pray is the way we used to say it. You would just send out a bunch of emails, send out a bunch of display ads, and hope your 0.4% click-through rate was good enough. It's not. And we've talked a little bit over the course of Measure Matters that incremental wins that you get from analytics are not going to be enough anymore. You need to be leveraging the entire stack.
Yep.
And so that means optimization of your site and your app and your workflow. It means measuring that stuff in Data Studio and reporting on it very well.
Yep.
We're going to get heated about this, but you just got to get it right. And so Optimize is a really important tool that obviously folks like SuperMetrics are saying, and Marketing Mojo is saying that everybody should be using this.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I've said it once, I've said it 100 times probably. Optimize is one of my favorite tools out there. I'm slightly biased because I've worked on it since we launched, or since well before we launched, but I do really think it is, as Marketing Mojo put it, kind of that missing piece that really brings all of these different groups together. And with Optimize, you can accomplish everything that we've talked about today in our optimization maturity model, moving from the very basics of optimization all the way through to personalizing based on very targeted actions on your site. And so there you go. Lewis Gray has gotten it right since at least 2010, probably much longer.
It's in writing. It's got my name on it. So let's wrap. This is a very informative deep dive into Optimize. I'm glad we were able to do it. If you are new to this team, you're new to this series, obviously you can connect with Measure Matters at #MeasureMatters on any social site. We'll find it. You can follow us at Google Analytics just about anywhere. And Krista, Seiden, and I are very easy to find on Twitter especially.
Yep.
We will see your feedback. We will take questions as we go through to our upcoming episodes. And the next one I'm also excited about is Data Studio. Yep. We talk about Data Studio every single time.
That's true. I think there hasn't been an episode we haven't talked about it.
There's a reason. It's because there's a lot going on with this product. It's really critically important. It's well liked by our users. And so I'm really excited to go deep on that and talk about just why all of that is working out so well.
Hopefully we can also talk about some of those data visualization best practices.
Yeah, I've got some ideas actually. I have some discussions of some best practices we're going to put together.
Perfect.
So we could talk about this all day. We're going to stop. So thank you very much for all of you who came, and stay tuned to YouTube for the recording and the sharing of this. We're going to share that out. Tell your friends, let them know, and until next time, Measure Matters.
Thanks, guys.